Tomb Raider. This is one of those landmark games. And part of it is because not many games at the time featured a known female protagonist. Samus Aran was found to be female. That was a surprise. But Lara Croft was obviously female. And this is what I think helps sell Tomb Raider. Now, Tomb Raider came out in the early days of PlayStation, and I think it was eventually ported to the computers. In fact, I don't think I got a copy of Tomb Raider until I got a computer capable of handling it. It was an early CD game, and it was remarkably well received. In fact, I remember being in college, and when the second game came out, the whole commercial frenzy was showing how much of an appeal she had, causing known hangouts, especially for boys, to be deserted. Now, Lara Croft was initially not, I don't think, was supposed to be, quote, a sex symbol. And even some of her more notable attributes were due to a mistake that they left in. But it caused a big stir. Now, she was named influential in a magazine article of influential men and women. I remember looking at that issue, but I can't remember what magazine it was. But it was an amazing game, and this was in the early days of computing, the early days of the game market. And again, Lara Croft was not initially supposed to be a sex symbol. Now, I got it after I got done in college. I got the first Tomb Raider game on my computer. And it took me a good amount of time, but I finally beat it. I think I only had to look up a few things. And this is a game that was designed, could be played in the casual way. Yes, you could find secrets to get some improvements, but eventually you would get every weapon. And it was remarkably well done for the limitations it had at development. I know people would complain about the controls now, however, this was long before the accepted WASD for controls and such. And the game is challenging, but once you learn the various skills, which it gives you a chance to learn them before you go into the game itself, it's a help. And sometimes you pick up some skills later on. But the secrets were really designed for the people who could achieve them. Your hardcore game players. And this was the first game that, in the initial series, that featured certain traits. one of the landmark things was seeing Laura fight a T-Rex. And that got put into the two games that came after it, as well as a level in the game in which Laura Croft gets completely unarmed. Of course, it's kind of hard to imagine a tough character like her getting disarmed unless she's taken by surprise. And they didn't want people to think that Laura was your typical damsel in distress. Also, in the beginning, they did not necessarily like Laura being flaunted for her sex appeal. Case in point, um, case in point, Laura Croft was the subject of the infamous Rule 34. And when Tomb Raider came out on the computer, it wasn't long until some clever coders found a way to make her appear nude. Now, this patch was available for download at a site that no longer exists. In fact, I would be very surprised if there is still code about for this patch. And it only changed the graphics and gameplay. So if you went into the cutscenes, and I'm talking the full motion cutscenes, you would not get the same appearance. Which tends to make sense. I mean, we were still in the early days of this stuff, so the hackers weren't as skilled as they are now, and also the skills that required it were a lot rarer at that time. But it also required uploading everything on the CD-ROM to the computer. Now remember, this is for in the days where computers didn't even have... I mean, we're talking in the days when flash drives were still maybe, that floppy disks were still used, mostly the three and a half floppy disks, and a computer with a gig of hard drive was considered impressive. And yeah, I had that. I had shortly before getting Tomb Raider, I had just gotten a new computer. And it was at the end of the Windows 95 run. So it was a Windows 95 computer, and it was capable of playing Tomb Raider, Tomb Raider 2, Tomb Raider 3. Now, I'm proud to say that Tomb Raider I managed to work my way through. And yes, I almost got through it with the quote, infamous Nude Raider patch. But I felt a little disjointed when you saw the full motion cutscenes, and eventually you realize how detrimental it can be to take up most of your hard drive for one game. So I resorted to going back to playing it the traditional way. No patch, having the CD in. And even the CD-ROM. Well, the CD-ROM had all the level music on it. as well as, of course, loading in what you need when you need it. And it was also the first time I've ever seen a game count the number of times you save. And that has been a bit of a staple for the Tomb Raider series, I think, and because it records when you save the game. So if you look back at it, if you look at your save files and it says 1, caves, 2, Tuma, city of whatever it was, 3, Lost Valley. That means you saved at least once per level. But then if you go down to, say, you're at the Tomb of Teotihuacan and it says 6, that means you overwrote your save twice. And I thought that was actually kind of neat because you could see how many times you saved. I'm not sure how you reset that count, but it could show how your skill improves the more you play. Less saves needed and all that. But, that's how things were. And because at the time they were more conscious of Laura's image as her stardom started to skyrocket, they were cracking down on anything that had the Tomb Raider looking sexual. They later embraced that, but you could see where they were at the time. And you also hear about people talking about when they play the game's Tomb Raider logic. I mean, you often get people wondering the game logic with various games. But Tomb Raider took it to a whole new level. Finding ammo in areas that it shouldn't be in, like a sealed part of a tomb. It makes you wonder, well, if this tomb's been sealed off, how are there health packs and weaponry in it? Or how, if these tigers or leopards or cougars were buried or sealed in this room, how the hell are they still alive? And the simple answer is you can't be certain. It's just what you call Tomb Raider logic. But it started a whole tradition and a good run of games. And there was one other thing that you had to give Tomb Raider credit for. It launched a franchise and created an icon. Lara Croft became, in part, an icon, but not only for her visual appeal, but here you had a woman who was no nonsense, takes no guff. She was the epitome of toughness while looking good or looking visually appealing. And she was no nonsense. And even in the first game, it appeared more that she would only engage in a battle with someone if she absolutely had to. as she is aware of certain individuals in the community, similar to her. And while it sets certain things up, later entries may call into question certain things. But in essence, Tomb Raider is a great game. The controls may be tricky nowadays, but it's still a good game and is definitely an experience. For anyone, I would recommend playing the original Tomb Raider. You can either play it on one of the consoles in some way or through emulation, or you could pick it up. It's available on a lot of sites now, GOG, Steam. It's definitely an experience. It started a franchise, and it is part of gaming history. It set the bar. It helped set a very high bar. And a lot of franchises and games and companies started to embrace the 3D, really started to embrace the 3D world. And it helped spawn creativity in a way similar to Doom. But I can get more into that later on. I hope you've listened to this all the way on as I've talked about Tomb Raider. And I'm sorry if I have droned a bit. It is a great game. And if you've listened to this to the end, thank you. And please subscribe if you find these enjoyable. You can also check out the playthrough I did of Tomb Raider. And it's a fun game. I really do recommend it. Also, subscribe to the channel. This is Rich Kale here on YouTube, Rich Gen X elsewhere. And you can check out some of the other videos I've done. I've done a few other retrospectives for games I've played through. And there will be more to come as I make my way through these games. Take care, everyone. Give it a like, subscribe to the channel. Bye all.